folks, Henish here. I'm with my friend Iiro Yrjola.
Yeah.
He's from Finland originally, but he's been in San Diego for a long time. How long have you been here now?
Since 92.
And so Iiro runs a very good solar consulting group, but we're not going to talk about that at all. But if you do, he's the guy to go to on that. So our show's name is I've Got a Theory, and he's got a theory, and I wanted him to chat about it with us. And so we're never trying to start any contention, but I like that this is kind of like a socially dynamic conversation. So tell us what you've got. What do you think?
Okay, so there's a lot of changes that happened in the last 150 years in the society,
right?
In the Western society specifically. In the old days, 150 years ago, it was very common to have multiple generations in living together.
Right.
So you had your kids, your grandkids.
We still see this in some countries.
Yeah, but mostly like America, the richer countries in Europe have changed drastically.
Right, it's called the nuclear family.
Yeah, so now you have your immediate family only, not even your parents, not your grandkids living with you, which creates a lot of issues theoretically, in my eyes. First of all, it was very common, even when I was growing up, it had already changed a lot, but we spent summers in our summer place, and we were, my grandparents, my parents, and us, at least 3 generations, several months a year together.
Right.
And when elderly people passed away, we saw it, we went to the funeral, and it was part of life.
Mm-hmm.
Now a lot of kids are completely isolated from seeing older people too much.
True, and their interaction,
Yeah, and especially in this country, you live thousands of miles away.
Yeah, maybe just on holidays or something.
Yeah,
like
you
that.
see Thanksgiving or that sort of thing. So, and that it seems to me creating a lot of.
Are you losing some values, maybe?
Yeah, you're losing the so-called family values.
Okay.
You are influenced a lot more by outside forces.
Right.
And we should be responsible for raising our kids.
Yeah.
And we could rely on our parents' wisdom. And if we see something they did wrong, we learn and we do things different.
Let me ask this question, and I'm trying to look at the timer on my clock, but I think it's okay. I have a feeling that it's happened, that the family structure changed also because of how fast society and technology and our environments changed, right?
That's correct.
Here's how I've seen it happen, is that 100, 150 years ago, people lived for the same way for maybe hundreds or thousands of years, right? So the values that you'd pass on and the lessons that you'd pass on would still be relevant. I think in the last several generations, what's happened is that the kids grew up and had to start telling their parents more often, you don't know what you're talking about. Your ideas are old-fashioned. That's not how we live nowadays. And so they're starting to get that division of, that's the way that used to be, and now we're living more modern. And I see this even now with young people today, is that parents don't know what they're talking about. And it's so different that they're starting to get that division, and it's hard to look towards your parents as your source of everything. So I would argue that there has to be a shift in that older generation to also understand that what they can provide has limits as well, right? I have to have the same conversation with my family, because my mom and dad will be like, well, this is how we used to do it. And I'm like, well, that's not relevant. We live in a different country, in a different society. So it's a balance now.
Very, very good points.
Yeah.
However, it's been relevant throughout centuries.
Right.
In the old days where people were hunter-gatherers, the young could hunt, the older could not. They had other wisdoms. Mm-hmm. So that's true still today.
True.
It doesn't mean that they have to advise on everything. A lot of things have changed where the parents or grandparents didn't have the education that we have.
Right.
So obviously they can't help me in engineering or certain business things because I've trained, got degrees on those. But it doesn't take away from the fundamental human values.
Yes.
And I think with the technology, we are losing a little bit of that side.
Yeah, I agree. And so it's good that you bring this up, because I think people do appreciate having their family around, especially when they have kids. Like when I've had my kids and I got my parents to move here, and now my wife's family wants to move here as well, her parents. So we'd have both sets of grandparents potentially here locally, which helps for childcare.
Yeah.
But then we also have to have that conversation with them, like, here's the things that you could advise our children on, and here's the things that I want you to not advise them on, and I want you to keep for us to advise them on.
Correct.
Right. And so just drawing those boundaries, whereas sometimes I know my family has had a hard time. They're like, oh, well, in our, when we grew up, we would advise our kids on everything, and they would just have to listen to us because, elders rule.
Yeah. And it's that part has moved towards a more reasonable direction.
Right.
The fact that somebody's elder, we need to respect them, but doesn't mean that they are always right.
Right.
Because the belief systems also were very different.
True.
The society was very different, but they still have a lot of wisdom. And you're absolutely right. We need to put boundaries. When we got married and got our first kid, I made it very clear that when we are in my house, not my in-laws nor my parents will never have a right to correct my child.
Right.
It's my house, it's my rules.
Perfect, yeah.
And it applied even on the island where we are all together.
Yeah.
The same rules apply. If my kids are going to their house, it's their rules.
Right.
And my kids, and I have to respect that.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. There, there's it's hard to make these kind of claims on a sweeping macro level, but anecdotally, there is benefit in having multiple generations interact more frequently.
I totally agree.
And that's a lost art, is what you're saying.
And I think that's affecting crime rates and not understanding people of variety of things like backgrounds, races.
True.
So I think if we would just go back to being humans.
Yeah, and taking care of your elders and taking care of, older and younger, you got to take care of.
Exactly.
It's got to go both ways. Yeah, I think people forget that. And so I showed my family a house where there's an older woman that lived by herself, and 93 years old, and the family neglected her. And she was living on a couch in a 5-bedroom house.
Yeah.
And my mom couldn't get over, why would her kids let her do this? Because she knew she had 4 adult children that were probably in their 60s or 50s or something. Yeah. Why would they let this woman live like this? And I was like, we don't know their background, but it's because of this, what you're talking about, that people lost their values of respecting their elders. You know?
Yeah.
And so it's too sad. So how do we fix it?
Granny flats is one great example because that allows you to bring your kids or your parents wherever you are.
They have their own private space. You have your private space, but they're close.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's like you used to have rooms. Now you have a lot more space. Society as a whole has more are richer.
Right.
So everybody has more, but the fundamental thing doesn't change. You have your space. They have their space, but yet you are available to help each other.
Right.
And you learn to value different generations.
You can share your lessons and pass the value.
So I think granny flats would be a perfect example of the right way to start building the society. Back to the
more
family is the
family
core of everything.
Yeah, I like it.
All right. Thank you, Henish.
Thank you. Appreciate it.